Good luck. It's not great. I'm gonna start with Tear Cache. Banish Sulliek to summon. Effect to mill 3. Alright. Oh. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is your boy Pay8. I'm feeling great, and I'm coming at you with another saucy deck profile. You really do either die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Because today we have Ishizu Tearlaments post-ban list. This deck took 8, technically 9 hits to the chest and is still not only playable, but I would argue one of the best decks this format. When I say best decks, I don't mean, of course, like the tier 1 in the same tier as like a deck like Kashtira, for example. Kashtira is an extremely unfriendly matchup for this deck, and as a result, you have to be kitted out to deal with that specific matchup. Labyrinth is also not amazing, it's not awful either, but because your number of mono attribute and or mono type monsters has went down, their floodgates can hit you a little bit harder. But I absolutely see this being one of the premier tier 1.5, tier 2 decks as soon as the new format comes in with either a ban list or new product that we don't really know how it will affect this deck. I would not count tier out yet, which is shocking because I was one of the people saying that this deck was absolutely dead, but yet here we are. So, there's a lot to go over. I'm going to go very briefly through the tier cards because if you've played Yu-Gi-Oh! At all in the last 7 months, you know what these cards do. But I will still recap them because I know there's a sizable amount of people that left the game when Poke came out and are just now starting to come back. So, I'm going to go as quickly as I can through them because there's a lot to talk about. So starting off with the tiers, of course, we have 3 copies of Reinoheart and 3 copies of Tearlaments Kashtira. So these are the only Tearlament monsters that are left at 3. So Reinoheart is one of the originals. On normal or special, sends a Tearlament monster from deck to grave except himself. And if he's sent to grave by card effect, you can summon him from hand, but banish and leaves the field. And if you do, send a tier card from hand to grave. Just like all the other costs in this deck, it does its thing and then sends the card from hand or field to grave. In his case, it sends from hand. It sends that for effect. So that triggers all of your monsters, all of your traps, all your spells. All the effects, the downsides, trigger each other. That's why the deck was so good. But yeah, 3 Reinoheart, obviously, because all the other ones are limited. There was a time where you only played 2 of this guy, not anymore. And then 3 of the new one, Tearlaments Kashtira. Interesting card. So during the main phase, as a quick effect, you can special summon this card from hand, and if you do, you banish a Tear or Kashtira card from hand or grave. And then if it's normal or special summon, you can send the top 3 cards of either player's deck to grave. And then if it's sent to grab a card effect, you can send the top 2 of your deck to grave. So, really good card. It helps to mitigate the damage of losing KITKALLOS' ability to mill 5 in Archetype. It's not quite as good, but I mean, she's still fine. Her type and attribute doesn't line up very well with the deck. You wish it was a dark, you wish it was an aqua, but it's not. But more ways to mill cards is always good, and it also is sometimes Havnis 4, 5, and 6. Pre-ban list now, obviously, that's not quite as good because you have less names. But she's still good. You just need names to play, and both of these are the only ones that we have that aren't limited. Speaking of the limited ones, 1 Scheiren, 1 Havnis, and 1 Merrli. These cards are all exceptionally playable. Scheiren is the extender from hand by pitching a card for effect, pitching a monster for effect, I apologize. Havnis is the hand trap, and Merrli is a normal summon. If normal or special, send the top 3. Havnis summons and mills 3, Scheiren summons and mill 3, and then they all fuse. These cards are extremely good. There's a reason that they're all limited. I'm not going to waste any more time on them. And then the honorary tier card is 3 King of the Swamp because we lost KITKALLOS, and we want to be able to make Rokalos, and just some other good fusion monsters. But you have to play this now. I actually really like it. It enables some really cool summons of like Big Grapha, the fusion monster, and just some other cool stuff. It's really, really nice in the deck, actually. So that's it for the tiers. The Ishizus are still really good, so we play all of them, 1 each of Mudora, Keldo, Kelbek, and Agido. If you haven't seen these, consider yourself lucky, but Mudora and Keldo can both banish themselves from grave as a quick effect to shuffle up to 3 cards from either grave in the deck. They're also sometimes extenders, not usually because they're limited now, but I digress. And then Kelbek and Agido both send the top 5 of both players' decks to the graveyard. And they have an additional effect. Kelbek is sometimes a hand trap, Agido is sometimes an extender, but again, you're not really doing that as much now. You mostly just want to mill with these and shuffle with these. Just really, really good cards. They also deserved to all be limited because they were so good at full power. And then, because Tear had so many cards in the main deck get hit, we needed ways to kind of fix the damage. So I'm actually playing a very small Danger package. I'm playing 2 copies of Danger Nessie and 2 copies of Mothman. The people that hate 2-ofs are going to scream at me, but there's a reason why I did this. So I originally wasn't playing these at all. I was playing a larger Shaddoll lineup, which that's coming up. We'll see that momentarily. But that bricked a little bit. So I was back to the drawing board. I can't afford like the Fenrir Pressure Planet package that a lot of people kind of pivoted to initially. And I don't even think it's all that great in this deck anyway, because Tearlaments Kashtira is a good card, but it's not one of the better ones in the deck. So I thought, okay, what if we took a page out of the EU Nats format and play Dangers, because they are typed really well. They're all darks. Nessie in particular is a dark aqua, which lines up really well for Garura and Kaleido Heart, and they're just good extenders. But the reason I play 2 and 2 is because I was testing with 3 and 1, and because we're milling so many times with this deck, we're still milling almost as many cards as we did pre-ban list. It's just the hits aren't quite as good as consistently. And consistently I would have a Nessie stranded in hand, and the Mothman, like the lone Mothman I was playing, would be milled out. So that basically took away the effect. But you don't really want to play too many of these because you aren't playing like a Danger tier deck that ladders into Curious, because obviously we don't have Curious anymore. So I just was like, okay, cool. I wanted to play a critical mass of them, so I saw either 0 or 1, exactly nothing more, consistently at least. And I ramped up to a second copy of Mothman, because Mothman's just the best one in this deck. The mirror match isn't everywhere, so this isn't a death sentence to activate. It can discard the stupid Trivikarma that gets stranded in hand, because that card is so good, except for when it's in the hand. Nessie, like just drawing exactly 1, has a chance to hit a Mothman. Even if you mill one of them, it's still fine. It's just really good. I didn't want to play Jackalope, because Jackalope can summon Nessie, but it's not really what you need. You already have enough ways to get Aquas. Tsuchinoko doesn't really do anything for this deck because we don't use anything with reptiles. This just works the best. It's weird to describe why 2 and 2 works, but that's something you just have to trust me on. It feels really good. And then, like I said, we do play a Shaddoll package. Initially, I was testing with it larger. It doesn't really work. You could play like Ariel if you're scared of like banishing cards from grave, but that doesn't seem as good this format. So we play 1 Squamata, 1 Beast, and 1 Hollow. Hollow is kind of a contentious pick. I know not everyone plays it. I think it's still really good. It's another pseudo miller. If it's sent from deck to grave by card effect, you can send cards on top of your deck to grave equal to the number of different original attributes among the monsters on the field, not just mine. It's decent into a board. It's just another way to mill some cards, which you really need in this deck. However, I think overcommitting into like the mill package is one of the mistakes that people make with Tier. I'm not always trying to go mill, but I think having it there just to dig like an extra 2 cards is fine. That does it for the monsters. Onto the spell cards. 3 of just an unbelievable field spell. 3 copies of Primeval Planet Perlereino. You know about this card. When it's activated, add a Tearlaments or Vsauce. You're never doing that. Fusion monsters and Tearlaments just get really big, and then if a tier monster is shuffled from your grave or field into the deck or extra deck, you can target a card in the field and destroy it. Just unbelievable card for the deck, does everything you want and more. It can pop your Kaleido Heart when you're trying to bread and butter combo turn 1, and Kaleido is just sometimes a search, which is really good. Unbelievable card. We played 2 copies of Scream. This was a pretty standard inclusion at 1 or 2. I think it's still worth it at 2. Some people are playing 3, that seems like a little much. So on normal or special of a monster, while you control a tier, you can send the top 3 of your deck to the grave, and then for the rest of the turn, all monsters your opponent controls lose 500. That does not say currently controls. So if they summon something later on, it also loses 500. Don't forget the attack reduction on this. I've done it, I'm guilty of it. I'm not amazing at playing this deck, but I like to think I'm fine with it just by texting with it so much. But there's so many things in this deck that just change attack and defense for no reason. I'm sorry, not defense, just attack. And then the important effect on this is if it's sent to grave by card effect, you can add a Tearlaments trap from deck to hand, which is really good. The traps are all playable. We're only playing a couple in the main deck. I'll talk about those when we get there, which is a really good card. And then 2 copies of Grief. This is one that's kind of picked up traction a little bit. So this is just E-Telly for a Tearlaments or Starfrost from deck or grave. Then you send a monster you control to grave with the same type or attribute as that special summon monster. This was a play in some tier decks to play around Bestials pre-ban list because you would summon, then send, and then fuse with no monsters on board. Now it's just a starter. It's also really good with tier cash if you have Rhino, because you can normal your Rhino, send tier cash and grave, mill 2, and then activate Grief, summon tier cash, send Rhino. And if you have a tier in hand, you can go chain link 1 tier cash, mill 3, chain link 2 Rhino, summon. It can help you get your plays going. And then the graveyard effect on this one is if it's sent to grave by card effect, you can target one of your banished tier traps and add it to your hand. Now you can only use one of these effects once per turn, but that's usually fine. This is a little bit better than Heartbeat's graveyard effect, which adds from grave, because we're very consistently banishing the traps with tier cash. Those are the best cards to banish other than a burnt Scream. So it's actually really, really good. You get a lot of mileage out of it when you wouldn't initially think you would. I just really like this card. You could play less. I just think having a second one in deck most of the time when you get into like the long game when your traps start getting banished is really good, because getting back a Sulliek can just be unbelievable in the long game. The deck still grinds just unreal. It's just so good at grinding. That hasn't changed. I can't even describe in words how well this deck plays in the long game still. Then the rest of the spells, we don't have a lot of space for hand traps, so I wanted to play just good going second cards that also just stop our opponent from interacting with us. So I'm playing 2 copies of Tactics in the main. I'm at 41 right now. You could go to 42 and play 3, but 3 Tactics clogs really hard. I don't like it. This is both good at hand trap deterrent going first and also just into the cash matchup. Most good cash players are just ending on a Reinoheart pass because it doesn't commit into Nibiru. It's just super low investment. I like that play a lot. I think that's the correct play. However, this is really good into that because a Reinoheart just absolutely destroys our deck. We know this. This has been talked about pre-ban list, like when Hypernova hype was coming around. We knew that that was going to happen. So having ways to dispatch that is really good in the main deck, so that's what this is for. There's also just other ways to do it. I side the third one for going second. I don't like the third one going first. That's why I just play 2 in the main. And then the rest of the spells, 1 Foolish, 1 Foolish Goods, 1 Poly, 1 Terraforming, and I'm actually playing 1 Shaddoll Fusion in the main deck as well. So we're siding the second and third. I'm not going to go into my full side deck because there's some hidden stuff in there that I want to keep under wraps, but the Shaddoll Fusion, 1 in the main, 2 in the side, has actually worked extremely well. The reason I'm doing this is because so frequently, because a sizable amount of your deck gets milled out, you will hit your Beast early on, or you'll hit your Squamata and your Beast and just have like Beast in hand, or just hit Squamata. There's a lot of ways to get these out of deck and then hit this later. And I wanted to have 1 additional search target off of that. Well, I say search target, you just send it, but putting Shaddoll Fusion in graveyard so that on your opponent's turn when you summon Winda, because I don't like to, but sometimes you just, that's all you have. Just being able to summon that, you don't actually care if your Winda gets cleared because you get Shaddoll Fusion back, and then going into their board, we play a couple of the extra Shaddoll monsters like Shekinaga, and that takes an Earth monster, which means you can activate this, sending a Shaddoll and one of the Ishizu Millers into a board to make a giant beat stick, get a draw, and mill 5. It's really, really good. And the 1 in the main is fine. I haven't really bricked on it. I don't think that that's a super big issue to worry about with this card. I just think the 1 is really good just to have. Because if you need it, you will find it. That's it for the spells. The trap cards, the tier trap ratios are kind of up in the air. I'm playing 2 copies of Sulliek and 1 copy of Metanoise. Some people are main decking Crime in addition to this, or they're playing 1 less Sulliek and playing the Crime. I think Crime is good in the side. I don't really care for it in the main as much. I think in certain matchups like Branded or Sprite, for example, I think Crime shines, but I'd rather have, you don't want to draw too many of these, first of all. I also like playing more than 1 Sulliek in the deck because I like being able to mill 1 and then still have a second one to search, because you want to mill this. It's just a tier monster search, which is really, really good. But Metanoise just being a Book of Moon also is fantastic into the Kashtira matchup. Again, you need ways to beat that, because Sulliek is fine into it. It's not amazing, but Metanoise is just unreal. And Metanoise is also a consistency card. I say that very loosely. Because it can send a tier monster, it's a little bit better than Sulliek if you don't have as much, because it can send from the deck, meanwhile Sulliek sends from the field. Also, Sulliek doesn't have to send a tier monster, you just have to control one on activation, so that's really good. Sometimes just comes up. There's a lot of unique interactions that this deck had that hasn't changed since the ban list, but just read these cards all the way through because there's a bunch of just hidden things you can do. And then the last trap card we play is the 1 copy of Trivikarma. This is a little bit of a brick, but it is so good. It doesn't do anything on field. It literally does nothing. The only thing that matters is that you can banish this card from grave to add a spell or trap that mentions Vsauce Starfrost from your deck to your hand. So that searches Metanoise, Sulliek, Grief, Scream, and Planet. It searches all of your spells and traps. Especially having a way to search Planet off of a mill is really good because getting Planet in rotation makes your grind game just fantastic. Every time you fusion summon, you just get to pop cards, and that just quickly adds up. Really good card. I don't like drawing it. There's ways to get it out with like Grapha Fusion discard or the dangers. That's why we play Mothman, because we want to find Mothman in the end, but Nessie's just type too good to not play. There's a lot of interplay between the pieces of this deck. So that does it for the main. Let's get to the extra. So we play 1 copy of Rokalos and 1 copy of Kaleidoheart. You could play 1 more Rokalos if you're scared of Cash banishing it. I'm not really. She's just a tool for the deck to make. I don't really think you need to be playing Roke Control. She's fantastic to have, but you don't need to play multiple of these. I think having the versatility of your extra deck is more important. I play 1 Winda, because you have to. I mean, we had 8 cards limited, so it's just what it is. I play 1 copy of Apkallone and 1 copy of Shekinaga. So this is the extended Shaddoll package that I was talking about. Apkallone turns Shaddoll Fusion into a negate going second. That's why I said it's also really good into the cash board, because you can send Hollow and Squamata and just negate the Reinoheart. It just turns it off. And it's a permanent negate too, which is really good. Even if they respond with like a Reinoheart to banish, it still just gets negated. And getting that macro off the board I think is super valuable. And then it can float. We're not playing a very large Shaddoll package, so it doesn't typically float. I mean, if you link it off, you can get a Beast, which is cool. You get to draw, you know, it's fine. But just having a negate I think is really good. And then Shekinaga is what you do into everything that is not cash, because you just get to send an Ishizu card and a Beast. So you get to chain block the mill by making the draw chain link 2, and you just get your whole play going from there. And she's just big. 2600 attack on a monster into a board is just really nice to have. This is kind of the spicy tech. I highly recommend this with the copies of Shaddoll Fusion. It has been fantastic. Rest of the fusions, 1 Mud Dragon, 1 Garua, still standard, 1 Drogostapelia. You don't really need multiple because we have other good fusions to make now. You could make like the Garua with this and you can't make the Garua, but you can make like Mud Dragon, or you can make just your big Grapha, or just, there was ways to put this back. You don't need multiple. Guardian Chimera is another option the deck has now, because the way it has played is changed, if that makes sense. Like the way it plays into boards is different now because we don't have KITKALLOS, and because of that we have to play King of the Swamp, and because of that we have access to Poly. Poly and the Guardian Chimera into a board is just fantastic. It's so good. If people aren't familiar with post-ban list tier innovation, they will not read this, so they might just let the Poly resolve even if they have a negate for it, which is a mistake. You can almost always threaten this into a board, which is really good. And then Big Grapha is one of my favorite cards in the extra deck. I think it's a really interesting piece of utility. It's a negate that gets cards out of your hand for effect. It's pretty good, and it's also just ginormous. Just another awesome tool for the deck. So that's it for the fusions. We're playing a lot more fusions in this build than both the pre-ban list build and some of the post-ban list builds. I just think the fusion monsters that the deck has access to are so good. But we do play some non-purple cards. Let's get into those now. So we play 1 Redoer, 1 Baguska, and 1 Zeus. Baguska is your plan B, where you have nothing else, so you just need to sit and pray for a turn. Doesn't feel good, but sometimes it's like that. Zeus is in here for obvious reasons. I have not summoned this yet, actually, but you could. I think just playing it's worth it. And then Redoer is still fantastic. Just detaching Scheirens for effect to fuse is still just so powerful. He's a fantastic card. And because there's a decent amount of trap cards in the format as well, this is just sometimes a spin, which is fantastic. And then the last two cards, we play one Cross Sheath and one Ausa. Ausa is extremely mid. I'm trying to cut her, I just don't know what for, because if I'm playing Sprint, I want to play an IP with that so I can sprint on my opponent's turn. I don't like sprint into, I don't like sprint turn 1 or just off of a monster, because Cross Sheath's the only level 2 we're playing, and Merrli's the only level 2 we're playing. So it's just really weird to make. You could cut Baguska for that, but then you lose your plan B, and I don't like that. There's just a lot of things to do with it. But that's enough about Ausa. Let's talk about Cross Sheath, because this card is fantastic. So this is the way to compensate for the Elf ban. The only relevant thing on this card is that if a monster is special summoned to a zone this card points to, you just get to fusion summon. If it points to a fusion monster, you get to special summon a level 4 or lower monster from your graveyard. So this is just Elf at home. It's really good. Also, it's just being able to summon back Reinoheart is fantastic, because that means you can send a tier targeted from deck and then just fuse with from there. It's fantastic. I think it's just such a good inclusion in the deck. I'm not playing like the Barone package because I don't play like Diviners. I don't think Diviner's that great. I tested with it initially, but I just kept breaking on it. But yeah, that is it for the profile portion. Let's get into these test hands because we like seeing the RNG run wild. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the test hands portion of the video. I would not recommend using these as sort of references as how to play the deck every single turn, because the strength of this deck is in its versatility. So what I'm going into may not be good for the specific matchup. If you're against Cash, you may prioritize one thing over another. But I digress. Just showing some of the sample lines, some of the most common lines that you'll take is my goal here. So let's get right into it. Test hand number 1. Sulliek, Planet, Shaddoll Fusion, Havnis, and Tactics. We are going to assume that we're uninterrupted because the deck already deals with enough RNG. I don't want to deal with more with like tactics and stuff like that, so we're just going to draw off with that in mind. I'm going to activate Planet just like its old times. Planet will search for our copy of... I kind of want to go for Scheiren or Rhino. Those are the choices. I think I'm just going to go for Scheiren. Cut it real quick, and then we will activate Scheiren in hand, pitching Havnis, summon herself, and mill top 3. Okay, cool, we're good. Wow, we're really good. Okay. We will go Chainlink 1 Havnis to fuse, Chainlink 2 Tier Cash to mill. We're not going to Rhino summon, because we're just going to use it as fusion material. We'll mill top 2, it's fine. Using these 3. And we're going to make Helshaddoll. This is already different than how the deck used to play. But the reason we do this is because on summon we're going to use Planet targeting Helshaddoll to pop it, and then we're going to use Helshaddoll's graveyard effect, summoning itself back, and sending a Tearlaments card from deck to grave. We are going to send Scream, and then Scream will activate to search for our copy of Metanoise. So this is the very low investment end board that the deck has access to. I think that this is just really good. Because we get our Sulliek and our Metanoise, we just set both of those and pass turn. This is so much more than it looks. So our opponent does something that we don't like, say it's like a Fenrir or something like that, we get to Sulliek target to just negate its effects and then send Keldo. Keldo, because it was sent, summons itself back and sends a tier card from deck to grave. And guess what? We hit a King of the Swamp, so we get to make KITKALLOS here. We will send Havnis. Havnis effective fuse. That will use these two to summon KITKALLOS, and then Planet gets to pop a card, and then KITKALLOS gets to negate, sending Sulliek, and Sulliek gets to search tier cache, and then we get to mill more cards. Oh, I'm sorry, Keldo also gets to spin because it was summoned back. Just, there's so much just off of those 2 cards, it's insane. Get back in deck, you're not milled yet. And then at some point in their turn, we tier cache. There's Sulliek. We get to mill 3. Oh, tier cache mill 2, Squamata as well to send. We're going to send Beast first, because we want that out of deck. I want to draw cards, please, and thank you. And then we get to mill 2 more. Cool, we get to draw. That's fine. Like, we just get to go so plus for no reason, and there's still a Metanoise back here. So, you know, another fusion coming because we hit another King of the Swamp. Ain't that crazy? Alright, that's enough from hand 1. That was just very simple, but does what it needs to do. Let's see if we can see some of the more wild parts of the deck in hand number 2. Alrighty, give it one final shuffle and one final cut. What do we get now? Nessie, Havnis, Sulliek, Scream, Hollow. I mean, that's pretty good. We're gonna lead with Nessie here because we actually do want this Nessie to hit. Basically anything but Havnis is fine. Even hitting Havnis isn't awful because we just get to make Garua with it, but we just prefer to not. Alright, 1 through 5, 6 will re-roll. 4. That's fine. We summon, we draw, Scream to search. King of the Swamp is actually really good here. So there's a couple things we could go for. We could go for another Sulliek if we want to use it as like a pitch or a discard, but I think I just would rather go for Metanoise. Then we will activate King of the Swamp. That's going to search for our copy of Poly. Next we get to activate Poly, fusing. There's a couple different ways you can go. You could fuse Havnis and Nessie to make Garua, and then Havnis and King fuse into something. Or you could just, there's just a bunch of ways you can go, but I think I'm going to use Havnis fusing herself and Hollow just to make Winda. And then activate Havnis and Grave, fusing herself and King of the Swamp to make Tearlaments. It's not pretty, but it does do the job. Also, Hollow's supposed to mill, so let me actually do that. They're still going to be there. Hollow will mill for, I believe Hollow will mill for 2. If I reverse the chain, Hollow will mill for 2, because we're going to place these 2 on bottom to make Tearlaments, and then we will mill. So we get to mill 2. Cool, Beast draw 1. Grief is completely fine. We just get that for more follow-up, and then we just set the 2 traps and pass. Again, same sort of deal. Sulliek and Tearlaments just interact super favorably. Winda is Winda, and we just have Metanoise if things get really bad as well. Still haven't seen the Ishizus in action, but we did see the danger utility there. So let's run, we'll do 2 more hands. If we don't see the Ishizus there, I'm going to put an Agido in my hand, and then we will go off from there. Just to demonstrate, you know, that the deck can still do what it used to do before. It's just not as consistent in how much it does. Hand number 3, Scheiren, King of the Swamp, Shaddoll Fusion, Tearlaments Scream, and Helshaddoll Hollow. That's really good. We are going to activate King of the Swamp, discarding itself to the graveyard to search Poly. Then we will activate Scream, and activate Scheiren. Scheiren is going to send Hollow, summon itself, and mill 3. At resolution, we will chainlink 1 Scream to mill 3, chainlink 2 Hollow to mill an additional card. So we're going to mill 4. There's the Ishizus. We will go 1 Tear Cache to Agido. We don't have a Tear card in hand to pitch for Reinoheart, so we're going to mill 7. Our opponent will mill 5. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. At resolution, we get chainlink 1 Scream search, chainlink 2 Sulliek search, chainlink 3. We've already used Tear Cache. Yep, chainlink 3 too. We've already used Tear Cache, so chainlink 3 Squamata to send. Squamata will let us send Beast. Sulliek will let us search for whatever we want. We already have. Do we have a King of the Swamp? Yes, we do. So we don't need to mill a lot more. We could go for Rhino here. So we're gonna go for Rhino, and off of Scream we will go for Sulliek. And then at resolution, Beast will let us draw a card as well. Okay. Yeah, RNG deck does not always just do RNG in the graveyard. We drew Planet, so we're going to activate Planet because having that in rotation is just phenomenal. We're going to search another copy of Tear Cache because we don't need Havnis. We want Havnis in deck to fuse with by like a Scream Mill or something like that. We want to thin the deck out to just the Tear cards as quickly as possible so that in the grind game, our Mill 3s start to look like they used to. So from this position, we can go Tear Cache. We want to banish the Sulliek, so that if we hit a Grief, it just gets to add it back, which is really good. So we're going to banish Sulliek, and then on someone we get to mill 3. That's fine. We're not going to use Rhino's effect. Again, we want to... actually, we could if we wanted to, because I forgot we have another Rhino in hand. Yeah, let's do it. Rhino summon back from grave, summon himself. Rhino effect ascend. Let's go for Havnis. Havnis in grave is going to place both herself and King of the Swamp on the bottom of deck. And then we'll make Roll Colosse. Then from here, we will just exceed these two into Redoer. Set the Sulliek, and pass turn. Nothing else to it. You have the negate off of Roll Colosse, you have the Sulliek, which again, these two, you want to stick these two as quickly as possible. Redoer can sometimes spin cards, but at least represents another fusion, which can get you to Kaleido Heart, or if you want, you can get to Winda at instant speed, which is really good as well. We're also not taking into account the Scream Mill. What does Scream mill us? Nothing super crazy. Actually, no, that is crazy because we get to get back Sulliek, I'm sorry, and then Metanoise gets back Tear Cache, so we get to try again and mill 3 more. And notice how thin the deck is getting. We are not far off from a name, so let's see if we find one with the Tear Cache in hand, because this is a quick effect. I'll banish Scream, it's not doing anything in grave. Effect to mill 3. Another Shuffler is still fine. Like, just getting more disruption out of the graveyard is always good. But yeah, that is hand number 3. Let's do one more. I would like to get a hand that demonstrates Cross Sheep's utility of the deck. Because there we wanted to make Redoer instead. There was no reason to commit into Cross Sheep. Usually the Cross Sheep hands come out when you don't have access to a Rhino on board and a Scheiren, but you do have like a Danger or just stuff like that. The Dangers do help you climb there a little bit easier, because Cross Sheep just takes 2 monsters with different names. So it's not particularly hard to make, but sometimes just having multiple Dangers doesn't always get you there. So, final hand, Planet, Reinoheart, Scheiren, Merrli, and Scream. Oh my god. We're gonna activate Planet. This is gonna get us our copy of Tear Cache. Adding it. Can I not throw cards? So do that. Activate Scream. Scheiren in hand is gonna summon herself, pitching Rhino, milling 3. Unsummon, Chainlink 1 Rhino, Chainlink 2 Scream, mill 3 more. Cool. Summon, pitch Merrli. Unsummon, Chainlink 1 Rhino to send, Chainlink 2 Merrli to fuse. That's going to fuse these two, so we have a negate up. That's the King of the Swamp in case you missed it. So we're going to go for Roll Colosse. And then Reinoheart. Oh, I'm sorry, we actually have a Chainlink 3 as well. And 4. We have Sulliek Search and Agido to mill. So we're gonna fuse, give me 1 second, let me resolve this properly. Again, just keep track of your graveyard effects. You can absolutely just lose out on value if you don't see them. So, let me structure this properly. I'm going a little too quickly. So we're gonna make Merrli Chainlink 1. We want to do that just because of the fact that if we hit more off the mills, because they're gonna be later in the chain, they're gonna resolve first. If we hit more, so we randomly wanna make something different along the way, you can do that. As long as you have a fusion monster to make when the card is activated, you can pivot into whatever you want based on your mills, which is really good. So we're gonna go 1 Merrli, 2 Rhino to send, because I wanna see what the mills get me first. 3 Agido, I believe. Yep, 3 Agido to mill 5, 4 Sulliek to search, because we wanna get another Tear Cache out of the deck. Because we're gonna use 1 this turn and the other next turn. So, resolving it properly this time, I apologize for that. So, we got the search, now we resolve the mill 5. Then we resolve Reinoheart. Oh, we hit a Havnis in there too, good lord. Send Tear Cache, because we have all the names that we could ever want in rotation. And then resolve Merrli to fuse. We're still doing the same play, but just keeping track of what we have is good. So we're gonna link, but this is a weird looking link monster. We're gonna fuse in a Roll Colosse. And then new chain, we have a couple new effects. We will chain 1 Havnis to fuse, and we will chain 2 Tear Cache to mill the top 2. Okay, Trivikarma is really, really good. Then we will fuse Havnis and Nessie into Garua. So we will actually get to see Cross Sheep's utility here in a hand that can extend. So we're gonna make Garua. Now there's a couple ways you could do this. We could actually planet pop here if we want to. We could pop our own Scream to search Sulliek. I think I'm actually going to do that. We don't value the random mill 3 quite as much after turn 1. We have our engine going, we don't need it as much, so we are going to planet pop Scream here. You could just neglect to, but I want to guarantee that I have access to a Sulliek. So we will get that. Then we will activate Tear Cache in hand, summoning itself and banishing Sulliek from grave. Then we're gonna activate the mill 3. Alright, I mean, hitting a second Scream is fine. We get to go Chainlink 1 Beast to draw, Chainlink 2 Metanoise target, another Tear Cache in grave, or Rhino. I think I'm actually going to go for Rhino. So we'll get back Rhino and then we get to draw. Grief is just fantastic here. Wow. So then we will link these two off. You want to keep the 2 level 4s on board because making Redoer is just so important. Link for Cross Sheep, Garua and Grave to draw. It just, sometimes you're just better. Sometimes you're just literally better than your opponent, and this deck really does kind of feel like that sometimes. So we linked off, we got our draw. All that's left to do is now just Xyz for Redoer. We're not taking advantage of Cross Sheep this turn. That is just something to summon back the Reinoheart on our opponent's turn. We just have a lot that we can go for. If you could even not do that, I just wanted to link it off just so that we can threaten it if need be. But I mean, yeah, we're just gonna set the Sulliek, and there's a lot going on here. So, into our opponent's board, right? We have the Rokalos negate, we have the Sulliek with Rokalos. Let's just put these closer together because these two play off each other fantastically well. Our Reader will attach something from the top of their deck. We're not taking that into account here. They do something that we don't want on board, we get to Redoer. You want to detach the Scheiren for effect because both of them don't get detached, it's just one. So then we will detach Scheiren for effect, activate Scheiren to fuse. There's a couple different ways you can go about this, but I actually have an interest in keeping the Reinoheart in grave, so we're going to use Scheiren, King of the Swamp, and we don't have another Aqua. It's fine, we'll use the Reinoheart in hand. I forgot that we fused off the Nessie. It's okay. We make Kaleido. On summon, it's going to be Chainlink 1 Kaleido to shuffle, Chainlink 2 Cross Sheep. And then we could plan it if we want to. We don't need to, but we could. So Cross Sheep will summon back Rhino. Kaleido will spin something. Rhino on summon will send. We've used Scheiren. We haven't used Havnis. Haven't used Merrli. So we will send Havnis. Now Havnis gets to fuse using itself and Garua to make Dragostapelia. If I could grab it. There it is. So that's 3 disruptions right there, maybe 4, because there's just, yeah, 4 as well, because there's Sulliek. And then it's even more because Sulliek's gonna send, Kaleidoheart's gonna summon back. We already used Havnis, already used Scheiren, haven't used Merrli. And just when our opponent thought that our board was done, we're gonna activate Merrli, placing itself and the Shaddoll Beast back on the bottom of the deck, because guess what? There's a Winda at the end of all of this. And there she is. I mean, what more is there to say? This, after playing a board that already doesn't lose to cards like Dark Ruler, is just, it's just really, really good. So, that is it for the deck profile. Thank y'all so much for watching. This is still a work in progress deck just because there's so many ways that this deck can go. I apologize for the longer video. There really is just so much to cover because this deck has changed radically. What it does is similar from before the ban list, but the ways we have to get there have changed so much. I wanted to spend time talking about my logic with my choices, and I hope that this has cleared that up. So, thank y'all again so much for watching. If you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. If you liked what you saw, let me know in the comments. If you want me to change anything, also let me know there. If you like this video, make sure to drop a like. I really appreciate everything that y'all do for me. I'm almost at 300 subs, which is maybe not super crazy, but every sub counts, you know, that's every additional person that's seen my content and likes it. I cannot be grateful enough to have you guys there. So thank you so much. I've been Pay8, I'm still feeling great, and I will see y'all in the next one. Peace.